Hello there. You are onto the Man to Man Session podcast. We raise kings to embrace their masculinity and amplify their influence in the society. Welcome. The Man to Man Session podcast is about to begin.
Oh, what an amazing pleasure to be with every single one of you again. Welcome to the second episode of How I Met My Wife series. I believe every single one of you learned a lot from our first speaker in the previous episode. In case you missed that, you should go back to our podcast page and listen as we had Mr. Uwe Musa on the show. Well, guys, for today, we have someone so dear to my heart. One of the latest married man in Nigeria. No other person than Mr. Abel Ajayi. Welcome to the show, sir. We wouldn't want to waste so much time because I, for one, am itching. I'm itching to hear what you have for us today. So we will go straight into it. And for the very first question for today, can you tell us how you met your wife?
All right. Good day. Thank you, Anna, for having me on this platform. Um, Question goes, how did I meet my wife? Well, it's quite an interesting story. Well, not so strange, but something I'm sure most couples share in common. We met um, through an organization, an association actually, which we both are both a part of, right? That's true. FECA, for those who might know that. And we had met at one of those meetings um, where we just had to familiarize based on the leadership structure at that moment. But then we became a little bit close and became friends and kept in touch for quite a long while before the whole thing evolved. And yeah, we're here today, and it's been really an amazing ride. But I think one of the things that stands out for me in all of the journey to getting to meet my wife is that it was just really not just it was not infatuation as some might have it, but it really was pure friendship sincerely. And we had all of the keeping in touch, and then eventually we just had to make that decision after there was a leading and there are actions that followed suit. All right.
Well, I must say that's quite interesting to know. So, out of every other young lady that you met out there, how did you know that the person that you are married to right now is the right person for you?
How did I know she was the right person for me? First off, in choosing who to marry, largely I think you're taking a step of faith, right? Because there is actually no way that you can entirely know the entirety. I mean, having a full grasp and picture of the person you're journeying with. Okay. However, there are pointers, there are things that you can hold on to. And those were the main things for me. First, I knew the person had to be a believer. Okay. And the person had to also not just be a believer, but genuinely love God. Because I have this very strong belief that if you find someone who loves God, definitely it will not be difficult for the person to reciprocate love back to you. Okay, it won't be difficult for the person to care for you and show concern, and be kind to you and every other person around them. So of course, fundamental for me was person had to really be saved and also love God genuinely. And moving on from there, There were other few traits that I was able to pick from her in particular. She was a very kind person to everyone around her. I mean, someone who really genuinely just loved people and would look out for their interests, irrespective of where they are from or what their stance are. So those were like two very key things that I put forward. And then eventually, I started also considering everything that had to do with physical appearance and also likes and interests, life mission and vision pursuits, and every of those things that I knew that were a do a go-to or not go-to area for me personally. So was it difficult to single that out from the number of numerous persons that I was around at that phase or season of my life? Well, yes, because I had a lot of good persons around me, to be fair and sincere, but like I mentioned earlier on, one would just need to indeed trust God for such decision. And I think it was at that point that it became my final decision. God had to be my go-to person. Like, okay, if I would have to trust whoever I'll be joining with for a very long time, then I have to do that with the consent of someone who knows beyond the now, right? So after I'd seen things that I knew that I was much okay with, and I just prayed and trusted God to confirm whatever things that I was having as promptings and leadings and all. And yeah, it came in handy, and we're still on that journey of faith, of trust, and of love. And we trust God to still help us further, even in marriage, as we keep on.
Oh, I heard that loud and clear. Choosing who to marry is a step of faith, and we should also watch out for pointers. Thank you very much. My next question would be, for you and for every young man out there who is preparing to get married and who is already married, yeah, what can be done and what have you done also to stay faithful in your marriage?
Okay, what do I do to keep faithfulness in marriage? Well, I think first of so many persons overestimate their power of control, right? And sometimes too, people underestimate their emotions, and that causes a lot of issues. Um, and in most cases too, you see situations where people do not really have a full understanding of the commitments that they made, while taking the marital vows. For me, and of course, we're learning every day, we're getting better at understanding ourselves every day and understanding the thing that we had agreed to go into, especially in marriage now. you know that knowledge itself should be able to drive everyone into staying faithful. Now, are there moments when you would see people who, in quotes, right, in quotes, who are more beautiful, more handsome, or more intelligent, in quotes, more um, probably accommodating, and all of the rest than your spouse? Yes, you will likely do so. You will likely have those persons even around you in your immediate environment. That's because you're encountering people every now and then, you know. But the mistake that I believe we make, especially from the angle of men now, is that when you get too used to someone, or you get too used to a particular thing or system, and I think this is ingrained in every man, right? If you notice how men function when it comes to little things as gadgets, a man buys a gadget today, this is not general though, but it happens with most persons. You're all about, oh, I need to get this new gadget. It was just newly launched, and I need to get it. Your drive is always at, let me go for this, right? And the moment you've gotten it and you've explored all of its features, you just feel like, oh, what's next? Oh, there's another one that is out there, and you're looking out to sell this and then get another, or even just buy another and add to what you have. I'm just using phone as an example. It could be a vehicle, it could be, for those who are game lovers, it could be a particular PS version, or it could just be anything entirely. You have that goal-getting mentality, but that's not same when it comes to marriage. And that's because if you've made a commitment to someone, then one of the things that shows responsibility as a man is that you're able to also keep to that vow that you have made to this particular individual. And that's because whatever thing that you are doing as a man would also largely evolve into the future, because soon enough you would have young boys that you're raising, right? And you're setting a pace, you're building a model for them. For me, these are some of the things I think of, I put forward, right? Aside the fact that my wife ordinarily is an amazing person, and I see no reason why I should want to you know go over and abroad trying to just get. I'm thinking, what is it that I'm looking out for that I do not have back home? But I also can understand that some cases might be different for certain men, where probably there are little issues here at home and you're looking for solace elsewhere. But I would rather say that whatever the challenge is, look out for ways to fix it, right? Scripture says in Proverbs that every man should draw from his own system and should cistern and drink from his own well. By doing that, you are telling yourself, it's a psychological thing, I believe, right? You're telling yourself that I have this person and I have the role and duty to keep my vows and commitments to this person. So even though I see 1,000 women out there who might look better, who might look preferable, and I feel like, oh, why was I early enough to have chosen this person? I am also committing again. So I remember the vows that I've made, and I want to prove that indeed I am a faithful man. And lastly, through the help of God, we stay faithful to the cause.
I definitely need to write this down. Don't overestimate your self control and emotions. Wow, that was really, really insightful. And then one other thing that struck me was when you said that one sign of responsibility as a man is our ability to keep to the vow that we made. Nice. All right, next question. What were the signs that showed that you were ready to leave bachelorhood? Okay, and how did you prepare for that transition?
This is an interesting question, I must say. How did I know that it was time to leave bachelorhood and all? Well, I think it's good to state clearly that not everybody must get married, so probably there aren't those um, green lights that you get to see and then say, oh, at this point you must know. It necessarily isn't financial stability. It also necessarily isn't mental stability, as it were. It also mustn't be that you are spiritually stable. I would say that it's about the decision that you want to make. Okay, in as much as those pointers too can be a thing, right? A man should be able to at least have a steady source of income, right? Also, a man should be able to lead himself, spiritually, and also be able to have another person whom they can journey together in that same light. A man should be mentally stable. Yes, those are good points. But in all, at least I would say for me, it was a choice. You just get to a point and you say to yourself, I think it's time for me to take that step, and then move on, right? I mean, it's a continuation of life. It's necessarily not a detour. It's not something that you're having to drastically change everything about your life. And that's why the person you're choosing to marry is very, very important, especially when it comes to vision and life purpose compatibility, so that you are not turning the steering, I mean, 180 degrees, where you're turning all around and you're starting a whole new life altogether. It's just you understanding what she is pursuing, and she understands what you are pursuing, and you both just continue from where you are at, so that what you are fulfilling is companionship, right? And then friendship being taken further from whatever stage that you both had been before then, you know. But what things did I begin to do the moment I knew that I was ready to take this decision? First, of course, like every new thing you're about to do will be, is to gain knowledge about that particular sphere. So, if I'm to start a school, I should find out about the school, about the course, what it would entail, what it would require, So I did all of that, right? I met people, talked to them, found out how I had a few friends who had gotten married. Some I spoke to, some I didn't. I just observed from a distance. You could tell when a man is thriving in his marriage. You could tell when he's not. In the case where you need to find a few things that you think might be wrong, and then try to understand why it's taking the way it is at that moment, I could just engage them. And if there are things that doing that is also exceptionally good and I like, I also find out how they're able to do that. So I interacted more with people who were already who had already been able to pass through that stage, and were doing well in it, and that encouraged me a lot. Because if we're going by the society, everybody somehow just believes that, oh, marriage is not this, it's overhyped and all of the rest. That's not true. It's also a function of the persons you're listening to and the kind of interactions that you're having. So yes, I made sure to have been able to at least have some level of consistency when it comes to income. I also made sure that mentally I was ready, spiritually too. Of course, that was a personal journey for me, so I didn't even take that lightly, and also building relationship with people, both within and without, and all of that really helped to just give sort of a balance to what was going to begin to happen as the new home was going to begin. So, yeah, pretty much I think those are some of the few things that I put in check personally, and it really, really helped me a great deal. Yeah.
No pressure, guys. No pressure. Here, this is right here is justice for the single. So, guys, you've heard it. No pressure, right? Not everybody must get married. Yeah, and of course, one thing to do to help you prepare, right, is to get knowledge. Like like he said, this is one reason why you know I had this burden and this passion, right, to put together this series, this How I Met My Wife series, as a compendium for men to learn about marriage, so that young men out there would not blindly step into a commitment that they have not been prepared for. Thank you so much for that, sir. So, next question, yeah. There's this notion of marrying a prayerful woman. Is there a need for the husband to be prayerful as well?
Um, that's a very funny one, actually, but I can relate. And I think one of the reasons why people have that notion that they should marry a prayerful woman is because largely, I would say, it might not be general, but largely, Most of us grew up in African homes, especially for persons who are Africans. We always probably had mothers who were the prayer warriors, who would stand in the gap, who would, come in the midnight, lay hands on you, who would be up early and would be praying, So some just took it as the standard, So the man wakes up, does the hard work, goes to work, brings in money, the woman just upholds the family in prayers and all of the rest. But I think there are lots of loopholes there. While it's important that a woman should be prayerful, it is way much more important that the man should be as well. What the children need are praying and believing parents, not mother, right? Praying and believing parents. So I would not even say that the father should be more prayerful than the mother. I would rather say that both parents should be as intense as both of them would have wanted to be. I mean, you need that kind of intensity to be at par. It might not be equal as it were, but I mean the drive should be that whatever that the father is doing that is supplying in terms of prayers and spirituality to the family, the mother should do same, and vice versa, right? What you would have succeeded in doing would be to raise a praying family, right? A home that trusts God, a home that looks up to the Father, and a home that grows in faith uniformly, right? So that when the kids are making references, they don't have to begin to pick which is more spiritual amongst the parents. So this is me encouraging everyone who is looking forward to be a father, and everyone who is already a father to say that, hey, look, it's not a woman's game. If you feel like getting money in is all you have to do, providing for the family is all that is necessary while she upholds in the prayer front. I mean, that's really, really missing it. It's even understandable to say that, okay, yes, you can, but probably for a season, probably the tenacity has not been there and all of the rest. But to outrightly, there's a word to use here, to outrightly more like contract your prayer life out to your wife is, I don't buy into that, right? Because when that fracture exists, there will begin to come in issues that you will not be able to trace. However, it's just a function of someone, a loop side that is existing, in the spirituality of the home. Because certain things you will sense, you cannot relate because you are just all about, in quotes, the mundane things, right? And on the other hand too, if the man is way much more spiritual and sensitive to spiritual things, there will be a loop side on the woman's side too, because but there should be this spiritual fervor that both are bringing in, such that you're sensing a thing, she's confirming it, right? She's seeing a vision, you're confirming it. The tempo is really very intense, and also at same level for both persons. I think that is the kind of home that Christ desires for everyone, and that's the kind of home that every man, especially since this is more of a man's platform, or men's platform rather. For men, you should not really just be on that end of let her just do that, and while I take care of other things. That's really not a very good way to carry the home front. Okay, so as the breadwinner, you should also be very much interested in every other thing that happens, especially the spiritual tempo of the home. All right, that really would help.
Hmm. Wow. As a man, you are the priest of your home. It reminds me of one of those days when I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues. She kept on repeating it and saying, "You have to be the priest of your home. You men, you guys have to be the priest of your home." So, which means that what you are saying, these ladies, they know it as well. They are not just looking out to marry any man, but they want to get married to a man that would step up and become the priest of the home. I mean, We've had, like you said, we've had women being the reference point of upholding the family in prayers. So here is my challenge to every single man out there. It's time for us to change the narrative and also become praying fathers. Yeah, thank you. So next question. Yeah. Beyond the corridors of church, what should men do to become the priests over their homes?
Yeah, awesome question here. So, from the previous response given, you could tell that there's a lot now dependent on the man as well, and just sort of an attention that should not be lost. So, what can men do beyond the corridors of the church, to maintain that level of spirituality? I would answer this by first just giving an illustration. So, recently, a female friend asked me a question, and the question was, when you guys meet, she was just referring to any circle of young men that just bond together. When you guys meet, what do you guys do? And that got me really thinking. Of course, her reference point was necessarily not even about spirituality, it was about something else. But that got me thinking, and that's what would form the answer to this question, to say, beyond the corridors of a church, what should men do to just maintain that fire, that consistency in spirituality? I think we should have more of platforms that encourage men to meet together amongst themselves. Now, naturally, a man is built, or as he assumes he is built, whichever you want to pick, to be a burden bearer, right? So you come into a situation and you're just looking for solutions. You're just looking for how to solve problems, probably based on what you've seen from other men around, So even as a man of the house, you're trying to solve problems. So men are mostly occupied with that, such that even when men consciously or unconsciously get to meet, they are talking about the next business opportunity. Well, of course, let me be careful to say also that I'm talking about men who are already in the right track, and not just any form of gathering of young boys or men around and all of the rest. Because I know a whole lot can happen in such circles, but if you see men who are already believers, right, and then who are getting to meet, most times the conversation is around the vision they are pursuing, right? The purpose that they are standing for. They are checking in on that. They are checking in on new opportunities, investment opportunities, how that they can be able to shoulder much more responsibility with much more ease. In fewer cases, you don't get to see conversations where men are talking about their mental states, right? The problems they are going through, their spiritual states, how that their fellowshipping with God is going. And I think this is something we must encourage much more, right? We have less platforms that encourage that. We see more on the women's end, where you see a meeting for women and all they're doing is praying. And if you ask what they're praying about, they're praying for their husbands, praying for their homes. And I think that also is forming that ideology much more solidly that, okay, that's what women should do. I think we should have more platforms for men like that, right? Young men who are married, older men who are married, such that as Paul, wrote and was advising, he said older men should teach younger men in these affairs, in these things, right? We should have much more of those platforms. And amongst every other thing that men could do, of course, making sure that you have a much more consistent fellowship with God as an individual, also making sure that you are entrusting all of the burdens you bear, on the shoulders of Christ, just as Christ had admonished in Matthew, to just cast your burdens on Him. Make sure that you are not trying to be the savior every now and then, even though there's unconsciously we just do that. These are things we should do while fellowshipping so that we don't get carried away with all of the things we need to do and problems we need to solve, younger ones we have to look out for, older parents that we need to cater for, in-laws and everyone around that you have to look out for and all that, but you are also consciously creating that environment where you can cast your burden and cares on the master because he actually cares and would want to take that off you. But most importantly, and I think the foremost of point I want to emphasize on this is to say men should have much more platforms, in smaller groups of 5, groups of 10, or whatever the number can be, where all they do is to encourage themselves, and just supply some wood to ensure that the fire keeps going and they can form a bond together.
This one enter well. I hear, sir. I hear. More meetings for men. We've heard. Definitely. All right. So next question. Yeah. With everything happening in our society, from the scandal to men has come and to what have you, what can every man out there? Because me, I will ensure that I protect myself. So what can every man out there do to prevent themselves from being distracted from other women and giving their attention to loving just their spouse?
Oh, wow, amazing. There are a lot of things men can do to keep themselves off the whole societal impression about men. We hear that a lot. Men has come. Of course, that's a product of experience that people have had with certain men. So much emphasis on the responsibility of men and all of the rest. But I think the narrative should be a whole lot different for people who are believers. And as a saying would go, there is no place where you would see a smoke if there's not been some fire ignited somewhere, right? And it means that in some ways, if for any reason certain things are tied to you, there must have been certain things you've done also, or certain impressions you've given, foremost of which is communication. So, one of the things that I try to do, and I'm still doing much more consciously, is to make sure that no other human, especially on the other side of creation, the female gender, should have my attention much more than my wife does. Do you understand? So, in the whole of the things that I would have to do with any other person, whether it be from career to ministry to counseling to providing help and support, or to just being that older person whom this particular lady wants to share things with, whoever or wherever the person is coming from should not, the attention and the communication level should never outweigh that which I have with my spouse. I think this is where most men really, really miss out on it, because what fuels any form of relationship is communication. The moment that anybody who has your attention definitely will become either an issue or a blessing to you in whatsoever way that you can classify it, right? So, what must you do? Form that level of communication consciously with your spouse, more intensely, create avenues where you can communicate much more. As a matter of fact, the moment you sense that there's some bit of conversation that you cannot have with your wife, then I think those are red flags. I mean, literally, you should be able to conveniently share whatsoever. And if you would have to begin to hide certain information or keep certain conversations you've had, especially if it has to do with an opposite sex, then you should know that you are already on that path of being unfaithful. And you would only affirm the things that has been said repeatedly about men, which we must change that narrative. We're not changing it because we just want people to believe something else. No, we must also act whatever things or narrative we now want to push to the society. Okay, so yeah, first and foremost, ensure that communication level is up and tight with your spouse as often and as always as it should be. I think one of the foremost counsel that I've received, as an intending um, husband, is to, I mean, gist and, as a matter of fact, gossip with your wife as much as possible. That might not be a husband's natural makeup, right? But you should be a good listener and also contribute to the conversation as much as possible. You're at work, throw in conversation, have chats, put in calls in between, just check on, just to make sure that nobody is able to have your full absolute attention much more than your spouse will do or would ever do, right? And I believe strongly that would help. That has been helping me, and I'm sure that would help a lot more of other persons. Because if you're waiting for the distractions to reduce, they most likely would not. But once people know that you don't have their time and attention, or rather that it is not as intense as you would for your wife, I mean, come on now. You should also all just get all of that away. And one other thing, lastly, that would help is I try as much as possible to just make mention of my wife in conversations, especially when it's with the opposite sex, with so much consciousness, So you just know that, hey, I mean, because we never can tell. Everybody out there just go for whatever they want, and married men are inclusive. All right. So stay safe out there and be intentional about communication.
For this personally, I think we need to get an A4 paper and write it boldly and then paste it at the door of our room so that when we wake up every morning we would see it. Guys, guys, like I'm literally dragging my ears. Guys, listen, you've heard it already. Listen, I'm going to repeat myself. No other female should have more of your attention and communication than your spouse. Point blank. All right, back to you, sir. Do
Oh,
you think
amazing. Do I think physical
physical
attraction
appearance
is
and
enough to
attraction is
sustain a
enough to
relationship?
sustain a
Absolutely
relationship?
not. Absolutely not. I mean, it's very important. Very, very important, right? If you must love someone, you must be physically attracted to the person, especially when it has to do with joining into marriage. That's not everything, but it matters. However, the moment you've chosen this person, chances are really high that the moment you're married to a person, they would likely change physically. There are high chances that every woman would get to increase, especially after childbirth. So you cannot want to say that you are only attracted to a slim lady and that was why you married your wife. Well, that might be true at the moment when you married her, but what happens when there are changes to her body that she is not in control of? I mean, at that instance, she might not physically be the person that you wanted. That can be an excuse for you to now begin to look around for other persons who are slim. Things would happen. The same thing applies to men. A lady cannot marry a man on the premise that he has six packs and is looking all built up. Chances are also that after you fed that man well enough, he could turn out to having a pot belly, And these are things that you both can or may not be able to help, as the case is, right? So, aside physical attraction, what are the things that should be on the front burner for you, as one who is getting married or one who is already married and is wanting to just keep that attraction or keep that level of focus on their spouse? I think, just like we've mentioned in this conversation, you should be able to state all of that right from the word go, and this should be tied more to values, right? Values, personal values. What does this person uphold in value that I also resonate with and I appreciate in them? These are some of the things that will likely not change in a hurry, and even if they might tend to, you can quickly draw their attention to it. Okay, some other things that also should be of premium attention for you should also be character traits. Okay, so you already know that, okay, this person can be outrightly rude, but you married her because she is fair and slim or because she's busty, you know. And right now you're getting someone who is insulting you back and forth, and you're wondering what you. So, but to me, I feel really that personal value should really take a forefront much more, right? Character traits should also do so. Of course, if you're a believer, you should know that taking up someone who is also of same faith and also believes the same things that you believe as in regards to um, faith and doctrine should be foremost. And then, of course, you look out for personal values, and then you look out for character traits. And you can begin to consider lots of compatibilities here and there, and just make sure that, okay, we should be able to have healthy conversations without having to go back and forth almost every time on different issues, right? And that will really help. But physical attraction, I don't think you should build a castle on that, right? Because that would likely change. First, second year into marriage, you might just have all of your whole beautiful Cinderella damsel turned into what you were contributing, of course, what you were also a part of changing in her entire system and structure, and same applies vice versa as well.
Exactly, you're very correct, sir. Physical attraction is important, but it is definitely not everything. Okay, so we've heard that not all relationships lead to marriage. Not just that we've heard, but it's true that not all relationships, yeah, lead to marriage. So, what do you think is required to make two people who go into a relationship to successfully get married and stay married?
Not all relationship leads to marriage. Yes, absolutely, that is true. Very, very much true, especially for those who are not married. And that's not because you are trying to convince yourself that, oh, this is not a do or die affair, so I don't have to end up with this person. Not really, but a whole lot can really happen. I learned and I understand fully well that courtship is a phase where you get to really put all of your considerations in view, right? That is when you learn intensely about the person you're about to marry. So when a red flag raises its head, that's the period where you're supposed to identify as much red flags as possible. That's why I don't advise or encourage that people should hurriedly get married. I mean, I've heard of cases where people get to meet, be in a relationship, cut, and get married within 6 months. While that is possible and might work for some persons, I don't recommend it. Why? Because you need ample time, right, to be able to understand people, understand their psychology, get to see them in different seasons, get to see them in different states, get to understand the people around them also, because there are lots of things you learn about someone that you might not have been able to know from them directly. Okay, so while you've put that in check and you're sure you want to go in, yeah, you go in straight in and you get ready to stay in. All right, but what are some of the things that will help you be able to journey from relationship into marriage and then to stay in marriage? I think we're in an age where people take lots of things as options. I mean, I wake up one morning, I don't like the way my wife speaks to me, and I'm like, you know what? We're done. Let's just part ways. Or a particular statement you will hear more often in this time and age, due to in irreconcilable differences, and I'm like, wow, how did you both get here? So one thing you must note is that there is a lot of endurance that must be put into both relationship and marriage. Endurance doesn't also mean that you just take whatever things come. No, it must be in tandem with your personal values and also with your spiritual values as well. You should have such. Okay, so if that is able to say, okay, I know this person is growing, this person is adjusting in these areas, and I really know that they would get better at it. Why throw in everything away, right? Of course, those should not also be in sensitive areas, areas like someone not being faithful. If you're cutting and you know someone is already not being faithful to you, I don't recommend you go in to such as marriage. I mean, such issues should have been outrightly dealt with. Okay, certain character traits too that you know that they've been repeatedly known with over the years. You might want to have them address those issues and deal with them before you're proceeding into marriage. But I'm saying that um, will your spouse step on your toes? Yes, they will. That's because that will likely be the person you will have highest level of communication and conversation with. And because of your personal differences too, moments would come when words might come out that it's not really the way you would wanted it to have come out. And yes, they will offend you, right? But you must be able to endure. That's where the endurance and patience come in. Then lastly, one of the things I'm going to share also is that as much as possible, have this understanding that in a relationship and in marriage, you're in it to serve your spouse. If you have this basic understanding, you will not go in with so much expectation, such that you're not looking for someone to do this and do that and do that, and once it's not met, you are all pissed off. The question is, how are you serving your spouse? And if you're marrying a believer too, of which I expect you should, the person should have same mindset. So we are both going in to serve ourselves, right? So I am putting in all of my attention and all of my energy to look out for areas and places where I need to support my wife. I need to encourage my wife. I need to build my wife up, and I'm in service to her. So I'm giving up some things and some areas because I want to please her, and she's in return doing same. We are in service to each other, and in doing that, we end up having a lasting, loving relationship because ultimately our lives are blessing ourselves and we are giving to each other every now and then. I think I see a lot of loophole in this area for most persons, and that eventually results in having numerous issues in the homes. I think this will really help.
Indeed, we need to identify as many red flags as possible during the dating, the friendship, and the courtship stage before we even eventually get married. We need to identify as many red flags as possible and tell ourselves the truth. This thing that we have seen, can we contain it if this person does not change? Will we be okay living with it or not? Wow. All right. Next question. Yeah. Is the man expected to be the sole provider of the welfare for the family?
Very interesting question here. Is the man expected to be, keyword, expected to be the sole source of the welfare of the home? Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Emphasis on the word expected, you know. But let's rephrase the question and say, should the man be the sole earner or sole person who handles the welfare of the home? Not necessarily, I would say, not necessarily. And the reason is basically because I believe the family is solely the responsibility of both parties in it. However, the man is naturally known to, provide, make sure everything that is available, and all of the rest. You know, there are cases, very few cases, where women are more so the breadwinners of the home. I mean, they have the higher income, right, and they take up the more financial burdens of the home. And those homes are doing well, pretty well. This is not me saying every man should now become um, you know low-headed and not do what is necessary to provide and sustain the family. No, I'm rather just saying that if we will be fair and honest to ourselves, right, we should be able to raise a home that also allows for women to thrive in the ways in which that they would want to. There are certain women who really want to work, okay? There are certain women who want to pursue careers. There are certain women who want to be all that they want to be. They have visions, they have dreams, they have passions, and all of the rest. In such cases, even if the man's vision and dream is not as robust and big as that of the woman, she can just take the forefront, right? And the man just does whatever little thing he can do from his end, and also look after the kids rather. This might sound like a very weird view, but it's the truth, and it should be normalized, right? It should be normalized. All right. But let's just stay within the confines of the question. Should a man be the sole breadwinner of a family? Yeah, he should. He should provide. He should be there. He should try as much as possible to build wealth. He should think of diverse ways to run investments, have resource available for his family, his children, and all of their welfare. And if possible, even build wealth and inheritance for his children's children. And that would be really amazing. So, yeah, I encourage that every man should be up and doing, should get something that is tenable, something that will, you can build upon, and you can also project to say, oh, it's going to grow in the next season. You should have diverse streams of income so that you can also not be entirely dependent, on other individuals. And again, I would say lastly, if the woman too can be of support, or if she can have input, why not? You should not be, you should not negate that. You should not stop her from doing that. Rather you should just join in and raise a home, a family together. That power and unity really goes a long way to help. Which means also that, yeah, if she's going to help in, then you also should be ready to also take up a lot of things on the home front. I mean, supporting in ways possible. If you can cook, why not? If you can do chores, why not? You can support in handling the kids, why not? That just gives a very beautiful and serene atmosphere for the family. Yeah.
Okay. So back to this family matter here. What's your take on 50-50 contribution from both spouse to family welfare?
My take on 50-50 contribution from both spouse, I would say is really everyone should do what works for them, right? And one of the things that I think couples should be able to agree on is on finance. Those are the very, very key topics to trash out when it comes to getting married. I think the foremost of it would be finance, sex, and yeah, spiritual beliefs and values. Those are major amongst every other thing that you want to quickly have a very solid agreement on, you know, because they can really cause a lot of fracas and issues on the home front. But what's my take? I think I agree on what works for you. Okay. In some cases, you could just largely say, oh, the woman has agreed to be a housewife. She's going to be home. You can't have a housewife kind of wife and you're expecting 50-50 contribution. That's crazy. That doesn't make sense. Okay. And you can't as well have a situation where your your earning is like 300% of hers and you're still asking for 50-50 contribution. That is a gross imbalance. Okay. And in the case where probably she's also the one who has the highest form of income and you're asking for 50-50 contribution, that also will be a high level of imbalance. Okay. However, if both parties are saying, okay, you know what, you earn as much as I do and we need finance to run this home, instead of someone having much more than the other does, and why don't we just put in as much as every other person is doing, because you want to create a savings culture and you also want to cover the expenses in the home. You can reach an agreement on what would work for both parties. But from my end, I would say just be fair to yourself and be available to raise your home collectively. You know, whatever is yours is mine, whatever is mine is yours. When we walk with this mentality, I think we will have homes that are not having this sense of ownership. I mean, I bought this car, this is my car. I bought this house, this is my house. Those are things that would even encourage people to be able to quickly say things like "get out of my house." I normally just hear that, and I'm drawn back to think, what do you mean by that? I mean, is this not supposed to be a family, as the case is? But again, lots of things work for different persons at different levels. So you might want to quickly agree with yourself, for me, what works for me, and then sit your spouse down and really clarify that. What's your expectation when it comes to finance, and how can we agree, based on what comes in from the different ends. Your formula can be different. I have that which works for my home, and that's based on the conversation I've had with my wife, and that really works for us, and we keep to it as much as possible. All right, but we know that at the back of our mind, the main goal is to get the family running and to get the home stable, lacking nothing, and suffering from nothing at all. Our dream is that we would at no point have to get stranded, that will now be sourcing for help or looking out for something out there, that we could have planned
Yeah,
around
definitely.
the
There is
income
no
source
one
for the
size
home, for
fits
the
all
family, and God has
solution.
been faithful
Do
thus
what
far.
works
All
for
right.
you and your spouse. The main goal is to get the family working. All right, so sir, before we bring this session to a close, like this has really been an insightful, impactful, thought-provoking learning experience. I don't know about every other person, but for me, you see, I'm usually the first person that learns. Like I'm learning. This is my own personal session of learning about marriage as well. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. It's an opportunity to learn from you as well as every other speaker. So before we bring this session to a close, right? In the last 1 year, like this has really been it's been a personal heart cry for me, right? In the last 1 year, we've heard of an increase in divorce cases, definitely caused by several reasons. And for me, right, I think there's something fundamentally wrong somewhere. And people are gradually buying into the concept that marriages don't last. What can we as men do to build a marriage that lasts? Because I'm not of the opinion, and I would not buy that ideology that marriages don't last. If people get into a marriage and it doesn't last for them, that's their own. I have told myself, and I'll keep on telling myself, and every other young man around me, that our marriage must work and our marriage must last. So, what can we as men do to build a marriage that lasts?
Oh well, I agree absolutely. There's been a hike in number of divorce out there, and I think one of the reasons is because people do not go into marriage these days with the absoluteness of ensuring that it works. Marriage requires a lot of work. It's not automatic. That you love someone doesn't mean that your relationship with the person would work and would long last. As a matter of fact, you might have heard this a lot of times too, and that's the saying which we all must also be aware of. Love is not enough, right? And love is not enough doesn't also mean that you should not love your partner. But there are certain moments and times that you might not really feel the whole butterfly in your belly, or that excitement of having to see your spouse, or that energy that comes with probably when you're in a relationship and all of the rest. But more so, you must be consciously going into marriage with the mindset that I am in it to work. And as I'm waking up every day, it's like reporting to an office. And what do you do when you're reporting to an office is to push the business further. So you can't sit back and expect that whatever knowledge that you started a business with is what would sustain the business. No, you have to increase knowledge in terms of marketing, in terms of business productivity, in terms of expansion, in terms of opening other streams or other channels of that business. Okay, so same applies to marriage. The moment you're in marriage, I believe strongly that one of the things you must do is to consciously learn about your spouse, learn about the institution called marriage, learn how to handle, if it's the male now, learn how to handle the female gender. You might think you've known that, but sincerely, very amazing gender they are. A lot of things change every now and then, but learn to accommodate a whole lot of things. And the same applies from the ladies to the guys. So if you're coming in with that mindset that, hey, I don't know as much as I think I do, all right, but I'm willing to, and willing and very okay to learn. While I was much younger in my teenage age, I used to really think that, well, when it's time for me to get into a relationship and then marriage, I think I know so much enough to be able to, handle a woman, handle a family. Yeah, I was so sure. I mean, and fair enough to myself. I think I knew a few things then that were just basic knowledge and pointers too. But there's something about experiencing these things that goes beyond the head knowledge. That's why I'm not even also surprised that people who are probably marriage counselors, or people who are motivational speakers when it comes to issues of relationship and marriage, almost always suffer in their own marriages as well. That's because the 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 way to treat it is not even the same for everyone. But one thing that is common with all is that you must be willing to continuously learn. You must be willing to continuously understand your spouse. You must be willing to continuously grow in the marriage. Like I used the example of starting a business. If you want the business to last and become something that is generational, you think of businesses like Ford Motors. It's been for ages, if not up to a century, right? There must be things that they've done that help them pass it on from generation to generation. We've also heard of businesses that don't last beyond 2 to 3 years or 5 years, right? There must be something they didn't do right. Okay, so for marriages to be failing means there's something that both parties are contributing to that is not working out, or is not favoring the marriage institution in which they both have agreed to be in. So aside agreeing with themselves that, oh, I've chosen this person amongst other people and I'm going to stay committed to this person, you also must continually now begin to grow, begin to learn, so you could also get involved. And the moment that you have challenges and issues, you must be able to give room to communicating and talking to trash it out. Okay. You hear things like irreconcilable differences. I don't think there are issues that cannot be reconciled. It's just a thing of the mind that, oh, I'm sorry, I've experienced this, or and all of that. Now, I must say at this point too, as a disclaimer, to say I don't know everything that everybody is experiencing in their home. Just by adventure, there are extreme cases as well. But I'm just saying, as a general view, to say that I believe largely that so many persons are not really paying attention to being willing to really, grow alongside their partners. Learn about themselves, and also improve on things that they ought to do while they're journeying marriage, because a lot of differences will come in. It might be change of location, it might be change of job, it might be kids coming in, and lots of things are happening all at the same time. You don't get too familiar with your partner to think you understand them fully. You must be willing to also talk about things, to say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, and this is how this action you normally take makes me feel. And the same person being able to also communicate the same to you. And in all, you're able to just reach an agreement and be willing to also work on yourself to get things better. Above all, like I mentioned earlier on, if you're coming into marriage with the mindset that you're coming to serve, you will know that when you are serving, you do not put on the cap and shoes of a master, right? You're not also expecting that no entitlement mentality there. You're just there as a servant, and you're willing to go the extra mile for your person. At that moment too, you know that love doesn't keep records of wrong. So you're not waiting to mention all of the things they've done over time and all of the issues that have been compounded and all that. You're quick to forgive. And if we can put all of these things together, um, I'm sure really we would have much more amazing homes where God can really be proud of and make reference to younger persons who are willing to come into the marriage institution and follow Him.
Kind, like, I'm literally having goosebumps right now. Thank you so much. Love is not enough. We need to enter marriage with the absoluteness that it will work. And we shouldn't also make the mistake of thinking that we understand our partner fully. Thank you. What you just said made me to remember a very good friend. He's a senior friend of mine, and he has been married for over 25 years now. And the last time that we met, he was telling me how he's still learning new things about his wife. And I was like, what? You're married for over 25 years and you are still learning new things about your wife? Wow. You know, really, it just goes to say a lot about having an absoluteness that our marriage would work, and never making the mistake of thinking that we know and understand our partner fully. It's a learning process in the forever journey. All right, sir. Thank you so much. So before we let you go, any last word for every man out there, both the bachelors and the husbands?
Well, it's been a great conversation on this platform. Thanks once again for having me. My final words to every man out there. Well, again, not far from what we've been conversing about. Just a quick reminder: you don't have to die. And I say that from every angle. You don't have to get frustrated. You don't have to fag out. You don't have to get exhausted. I mean, try as much as possible to put all the burdens that you bear on Christ, and He's able, much more than able, to carry them and lead you through. Right? To be able to lead a home, you must first have a superior leading. It's not head knowledge, it's not book knowledge, it's not such that you can just Google, and find out 7 ways to keep a home going, 6 ways to maintain a good relationship, how to satisfy a woman. These are not things that, even though you could glean from people around and from resource around, but overall, I think that the more dependent and reliant we are on our Maker, the more that we are able to see through situations, the more that we are able to pull through all of the challenges that we're going through. You know, you don't have to swallow up all of the pains. You don't have to push all of the pressure down and just assume that um, you will be fine by compounding it all up. I think as much as possible, every man deserves to have an accountability group, an accountability circle. If you don't have one, you can create one. It could just be 2 persons, it could be three. For singles, yes, you can. For married, yes, you can. but try as much as possible to encourage growth in concerts. Have people that will indeed be a source of encouragement to you, even as you're hoping to also build an exceptional, godly family that is built solidly on Christ. And I trust the Lord to help us and guide us through. Grace and strength, love always from me. Peace.
Wow, thank you so much for your time and the wisdom and the knowledge that you shared to every single man listening out there on the show today. Thank you. We really, really appreciate it. And on behalf of every man in the world, we extend our regards to your lovely and beautiful wife. Thank you so much, Mr. Abel. These are wisdom's capsule for a successful relationship and marriage. Go back and listen to this episode again. Listen to the previous episode. In fact, go back and get the episode from the first series. Sit down with your writing materials. Listen from the first to the last speaker until it forms a template for your relationship and your marriage. You will not regret you did so. Listen to this again. So, guys, this is where we will draw the curtains for today. Don't miss next week's episode. Okay? So I'm going to close with these words by Pastor Ezekiel Atang of blessed memory. Yeah? The journey of marriage does not begin when you get married. It started while you were single. For marriage is the harvest ground for all the decisions you made as a single person. Thank you, everybody. See you all next week. Cheers.